We will now review the configuration behind the plant maintenance. The way this is set up is that we'll go through each folder and we'll talk about the configuration behind each folder, and then we'll discuss what needs to be uh, adjusted during go lives for different plants, and what could just be left alone, and also possible problems that could stem from certain things. So let's begin. So we'll start with the technical structure. Once again, we look at our Visio diagram, technical structure here. And this is all considered master data when you deal with technical structure. None of it's considered transactional data. So if we look at this, we have a technical structure, which is a T code, and then creating equipment, creating function locations, creating bombs. So the things that could be set up in configuration are deal with IH08, how this defaults in, IH01, how that defaults in, which are both list edits. And just so you're aware, all list edits you can set up in configuration, or you can set up via a variant in layout. We decided to go via the variant and layout here with Maple Leaf, so you do not need to worry about that in configuration. I'll show you where it is though. As far as create equipment, create function location, in configuration you can make certain fields mandatory. You could also make certain fields default in or not default in. Right now the way the solution is, it shows that when you have a function location, you create another function location that has a similar naming structure, it'll default in all the data from the superior naming structure function location. So that's how configuration is set up right now. That's fine. As far as equipment, none of it transfers over. It's just independent item. So you have to put in all the data every time you create a new piece of equipment, unless you reference another equipment. We haven't made many fields mandatory. We only made a few fields mandatory. You could always change that. I'll give you an example. We go into IE01. We create a new equipment. We'll say this test equipment. We're not going to save this. And we realize that right now none of this is mandatory. Object type's not mandatory. The value is not mandatory. Manufacturer, model, none of it is mandatory. You can make this mandatory if you want, if you feel it's important, like if you feel that the object type is always mandatory, or you need to have an acquisition value if you decide to add asset management in the future. So you could go in configuration and make that mandatory. Right now this is mandatory maintenance plant. That's a default value. You could also make let's say sort field is the old equipment number, or room. And as you can see, certain fields are hidden and some are not. So you see that inventory number is hidden. So you could always unhide that and add an inventory number. You could add classes. You could add all these values in here. You could also add work center. So I'll explain to you how this works right now. The way it's set up is that if you put a main work center here, so let's say we put Vlad. If you put a main work center here, Vlad, every time you create a work order for this equipment, it will default in that work center all the time. It also defaulted in if you create preventive maintenance plans, and any work that comes from this, it'll always default in that work center. It is up to you if you want to do that or not. You could instruct your users to do that, and that's how this is standard SAP, so you don't need to worry about configuration for that. Partners is turned off, and asset management is not set up for you guys. So if you look here where it says asset is not set up, so right now there's a disconnect. So your finance department creates assets, and they could create an asset for, let's say this is a Ford Mustang. License plate would be ABXR455. You create an asset management record through finance saying we just bought a Ford Mustang for 30,000, and then you can link it here, and then it naturally depreciates it. Not only that, if you do any maintenance on this, it'll transfer it over to the asset management record. And it's good practice, but you guys don't have that set up right now. It is something that is in the works, so just to keep that in mind. Um, Besides that, this is a default cost center. You could also default things like WBS element and internal orders. So WBS element, what that is it's like a budget. So you got a certain budget for, like, let's say there's a project worth $1 million, and then you split it up into different elements. So let's say vehicles is $10,000 of that $1 million budget. You could put the WBS element here. You guys don't have that right now, but it's just something to keep in mind how that works and what this field actually means. And then here you could put a capital order number. So that's how it works. Right now, this is hidden. You could actually make that, what happens when you add it to a technical structure. Let's say I got it to 25 zero line bread. Let's just pretend. It automatically defaults in here. Now, what happens in the way you guys are set up in Maple Leaf is that your technical structure is very flexible. You could take equipment in and out, and there's no checks against where certain equipment should be installed or not installed, or if you do in replacing the equipment, it's not checking that the part that you're putting in is actually a piece of equipment within your flock structure. So just so you keep that in mind, that none of that is integrated. This is a partners that's not being used right now. And then if you have a counter, you could click right here and I'll show you all that. So there's no counters right now, but if you were to have one, you could see it right there. All right, so same goes for function location, and same goes for bill of materials. So now let's go look at the configuration menu. So you go SPRO, IMG, and the way configuration is set up is for details like we just spoke about the equipment, that'd be the plant maintenance level. If you're looking at something very high level like a plant or planning plant, that'll be at the enterprise level. So enterprise level, you do, let's say, the definition. Here it is: plant maintenance, maintain planning plants, assignment, etc. So cross-application components deals with like document info records. If you guys decide to put that in, which is something you might consider, that'll be the cross-application components, because it's not just used across plant maintenance; it's used across everything, materials management, finance. So that's something to consider. Even time entry is actually used across many modules, so that'll be maintained here. Depends if you use CATS or the cross application components tab. If you need to do anything with materials management, your inventory management will be kept at this level, materials management. So that's something to keep in mind, your configuration. It integrates with many aspects of the business, so that's something definitely that you need to communicate with the other stakeholders to talk about what changes you're making and why you're making them. If it deals, so right here, inventory, that definitely is integrated with many other aspects of the business. Maintenance is it is standalone, so you don't have to worry about that. Even the time entry, work centers, time entry, work orders, preventive, notifications, all this is standalone. Capital orders integrates with finance, so that's something to keep in mind if you're making any config changes. Purchasing is outside of our realm here in these videos. Purchase recs, you could look into that, how they're created from plant maintenance. That's fine, that's in our realm. Goods receipt integrates with many aspects of the business, so that's something you have to talk with other people. And then cycle count also integrates with other aspects of the business, because production planning also does cycle count, so something to keep in mind as you're doing that. Goods issue as well. So going back to this video. So with finance, You'll have to talk to a financial consultant. You'd go in accounting, be in the accounting. So that's how this is set up. So we're going to look at plant maintenance now. So how's this split up? So we go master data and plant maintenance. When we open this up, we see technical objects here. And we see there's many tabs here. So, hey, how you doing? So, technical objects, this is master data. You'll see most of the information here. I wouldn't recommend anything to be changed, just when you do configuration for new plants, just to recognize that there's certain steps that need to be taken, but overall, the solution is pretty solid. If we look at it here, the main things you got to do is define technical objects. So we click here. Here's all the technical objects. You're always adding new ones. And then what you have to make sure is that when you add a new one, that whatever description you give it, you have to log in both French and English to put in the description. It won't transfer over to French, so that's something to keep in mind. And then you save. It's very easy. If you're to do it, you just press new entries, type it in, the number and the description, and press save, and then you put the transport number. So that's all it takes. You have to make sure the number is unique. You can't have the same object type number for two items. It'll give you an error. Also, if you're going to change the object type numbers for existing objects, you have to make sure that you go into production and make sure that no technical objects are assigned to this, because if you'll get an error. So what I would do if I were you, I'll go into production, delete the object type number from the equipment record. So if we go into IE01, let's go look at this. Here's the object type. You go in here and delete it. Blank it out, press save. Go back into ECD, put in the new number or change the numbers you want to change. Press save, transport it over to ECQ, then transport it to production. Once it's in production, go back into your equipment and put in the number. And the best way to get a list of this equipment is through H08. You go H08, you get a list of all your equipment, and then you go add object type field, technical object I think it's called. There you go. You go to add this field. None of them are populated in this example, but you look here and go, oh, okay, this is 1085. I'm changing this one, so I'm gonna highlight this one and make the changes. So that's how you would do it. So that's that. That's actually done. We're not doing this. Planner groups, you do this. This is part of the go live for new plants config steps, which we explain in a different video. So that's done. You don't need this. We're not using ABC indicators. This is for security. If you want to get a little more advanced in your security, you go into this level. Right now you guys are not doing that, and it looks like you have never done it. But what you could do here is, you can see it's blank. What you could do here, you could create authorization groups, and then I could put here you could put an authorization group, let's say 1, 2, 3. Then you go back into your equipment, and you could put it on 1, 2, 3 here. So then, let's say I put 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3 here in the equipment. You have to go into the person's ID, into their user profile, and put auth group 1, 2, 3. Security team has to do that for you. And then once you do that, only that person with 1, 2, 3 in their profile can view this equipment or make any changes. Everybody else actually would be blind. They don't even know this equipment existed. So it's pretty high level of security. You could do this to do workarounds, like sometimes you'll run into certain transaction codes that the basic check of planning plan and maintenance plan won't work. So this is a next level of security to restrict users from gaining access to certain plants be a backdoor like certain T codes that allow that. So keep it in mind. So that's that. So we talked about auth groups. You do not need to know this. View profiles of technical objects, just the way it looks the screen. There's been no complaints the way it looks, so you don't need to go change it. This one's kind of important. It's called define object information key. So we'll click here. So if we go look at our equipment, let's go pick this mixer 3 here. There's this blue eye here. There's a lot of blue eyes, as you notice. There's a blue eye here, a blue eye here. And if you get certain other T codes, you'll see more blue eyes. So whenever the blue eye is in this section of the SAP screen, it is called the object info box. So object info box holds information about this specific equipment. So here's the information. It holds the last the last 2 notifications and the last active work order. So in this case, so we could go here. We could go scale 1, object info, and we see this. It's completed, not completed, etc. Now, if we're to look this from a work order level, mixer 3. Here, this work order level, you'll notice is slightly different. It adds on here, which is a breakdown reports, notification created, order created, processing days, and etc., etc., etc. So the way this object info box looks is set up in configuration. So you go into configuration. You have to find out which is the one that is active. So that'll be defined in the next screen, by the way. So if we look here, we go define selection procedures for structural. So here we go. So in this case, we're using this one. So tells you the number of days it allows to go up to, processing days. The number will allow you to show up to 5, etc. So you could define these values. You can make it, you could change it around different views. And yeah, that's how that works. That's defined here. There's a default one right here. Z means that you created it. It's created by Maple Leaf. It's client specific. So that's how the object info keys work. So we're finished with the general data here. Next, we're going to go into specifics. So we first go into function location. So the way it works is for function locations, let's go look at a function location actually, so you understand how this works. So we go look at a function location. You'll see there's a certain naming convention. Now, when you create a new function location, there's a thing called the edit mask, and then there's the hierarchy levels. So this is all defined in configuration, and then you select your structure indicator. So here we only, in Maple Leaf, we only have one as a default one. Everybody uses the exact same structure indicator. Function location category too. And basically it tells you what characters you're allowed to put here. So if I really wanted to, I could make it character and then number and then character. But it was defined as X. X means it could be anything. So it could be a name, or it could be the number 1, 2, 3, 4. It could be anything. As long as you have the first one needs 4, you need to have 4 digits, 4 characters, I mean. And then you need to have the next one 3 characters and so forth. You just got to follow the structure indicator set up here. If you ever need to change the structure indicator, it's a real big change. It'll actually cause quite a bit of havoc, so I do not recommend you change that. So, but the way that you do change it if needed, you click here. You look at your structure indicator, and then you could change this. So the way it works is that wherever you have a 1, 2, 3, it basically means first level, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7 level. I could easily put here 1. I could put 1, 2, 3, 4, and that means that each character has a certain value. So this deals with the hierarchy. So we're going to do this in ECD now. So you call it something. And then you put the edit mask. So I could put x, 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 x. Okay. So back to the video. So here I made a fake structure indicator. Like I said, I highly don't recommend you change the existing one. If anything, I recommend you make a new one. And any existing equipment that you have is already under the old structure indicator. You will have to leave that way. And if you wish to change it for some reason, you will have to. I will highly recommend you just create a new flock structure with the new structure indicator, and you leave the old one behind to keep records of what work orders are created and what parts were bought, and etc., etc., etc. You do not want to change it on it. It'll be a very big mess. So how do we do this? So here X means it could be alphanumeric. A means is a character like A, B, C, D, and then N means is a number. So you always should put a number below where you want the next hierarchy to start. So let's say, as an example, I want the naming convention to be A, and then the next thing would be mixer. So what it will do, it'll look at the first one, A. Okay, A is the first hierarchy. So if I have another item that has B, or just A by itself, this is higher than this because this has more characters afterwards. So it's a higher hierarchy 1. And then this is 2. And you can leave it just AM because it demands that all 3 characters be filled in. That's where the hierarchy ends. If it doesn't do that, can't make a decision on what hierarchy this is. So you need to put the whole thing. If you wish to have it hierarchy like that, you could put 2, 3, 4. You could do that. But that's the gist of how the structure indicator works. When you create a structure indicator, it's actually a pretty big thing, pretty big deal. So definitely get some instructions, go online and just make sure you know what you're doing right before you go on. This video explains it, but just so you know what your decisions are before you go onto it. Like I said, you should not likely make this, but it's good to know how it works. This right here is probably a test. Yes, it is. It's just a test somebody was using. As you can see, we could change this one around. So, all right. The next thing I'm going to talk about, it's a display. It's pretty good. You could use it for your users. Right now, the way it works, I'll demonstrate it to you. Let's say we log in here and we see what we see right now, we see the flock ID, and then we see the description, and then we see a bunch of other characters, put a planning plant and the cost center and all. And this is user specific that we defined. Now, depending on which user you have, you'll see different fields. And the way you define it for the user, you go here, field selection, function location, and you select what fields you want to see. Now, what you could do, you could set this up at a plant, like a corporation level. So all of Maple Leaf will see the same thing as a default, and then they could change it if they like. So you go here, and this is for your flock, your structure. So right now the default is at first is the flock ID and then there's a description and nothing else shows up after. You could change that. You could decide to say, hey, I want to see the equipment installed as number 3. I want the planning plant as 4. The main work center is 5. You could do that if you want. Or the statuses. You could, any field that exists here, you could put that in there. But we're not going to. We're just going to default it to these 2. But I'm just letting you know if you ever get a lot of requests saying that these 2 are not sufficient and you wish to put in an extra field here and it's too much trouble for each individual user to go in there and input it themselves, you could do that at a whole organization level. And that's how you do it, through this part of the customization. Alright, let's keep going. Now, the next, all these T codes here that say define, you just basically define different transaction codes. It could be IH01, IH04, IL08. You have to just figure out which one deals with what. They're all list edits. Some of them just define the, once you get into the list edit and you go to the layout, what fields you can actually view for the function location. So it minimizes it if you like. I'll give you an example. So go in here, we're going to list edit. Sorry. Okay, so we go here. And here's your list edit, and you could go in here and these fields are defined. You could take them away if you like, make less fields here so your users have less things to look at. So all these here that said define, set list, they all do that. So they just, as you recognize this is probably IH06. So like I said, you could do this at the configuration level, or you could do this at the list edit variant level. So it is up to you. These deals with the multi-level list displays, which none of the users here at Maple Leaf use. Same thing. There's many multi-level list display T codes out there that you could use. None of them are being used right now by users. In the future, if you wish to use them, you just find out the T code name and you find out which T code is linked to which configuration screen here, and you just go in there and define it. Define what fields you want to see, what fields you want to keep hidden, etc. So that's how that works. So we're finished with function locations.